I never thought I'd be the one with the power to fire my own boss. Me. Just another corporate drone pushing papers and crunching numbers in a glass tower. But he had no idea that every inappropriate comment, every unwanted touch, every threatening email was being documented. He thought his power made him untouchable. He thought wrong. When the moment finally came, when all those carefully collected pieces of evidence crashed down on his head, I wasn't the victim anymore. I was the executioner. My name is Emily Carter. And at 32, I thought I had my life together. Marketing specialist at Brightwell Strategies, one of Illinois's most prestigious consulting firms. 6-figure salary, corner cubicle with a view of downtown Ashford's skyline, and a career trajectory that should have taken me to senior management within 2 years. Should have. The morning commute from my Lincoln Park apartment to the office used to energize me. Coffee in hand, heels clicking against marble floors. That sense of purpose that comes from knowing you're good at what you do. I'd worked my ass off for 7 years to get here. Late nights, weekend proposals, schmoozing at conferences I'd rather skip. Every sacrifice felt worth it when I walked through those gleaming doors each morning. Brightwell Strategies occupied the top 5 floors of the Meridian Tower. We handled marketing campaigns for Fortune 500 companies, political candidates, anyone who could afford our astronomical fees. The office was all glass and chrome, designed to intimidate and impress. Open floor plans that supposedly encouraged collaboration, but really just meant everyone could watch everyone else. No privacy, no secrets, or so we pretended. Richard Hale ruled the 3rd floor like his personal kingdom. VP of Strategic Development, 43 years old, with that specific brand of Midwest charm that made clients eat out of his palm. Salt and pepper hair always perfectly styled, custom suits that cost more than my monthly rent, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. The golden boy who'd brought in 3 major pharmaceutical accounts last quarter alone. Untouchable. I'd been assigned to his team 6 months ago. A promotion, they called it. You'll learn so much from Richard, our CEO had said, shaking my hand. He's grooming the next generation of leaders here. The first few weeks were everything I'd hoped. Richard was brilliant. I couldn't deny that. Watching him dissect a client's problem and rebuild their entire brand strategy was like watching a masterclass. He'd include me in high-level meetings, introduce me as one of our rising stars, and actually listened when I pitched ideas. I felt seen, valued, like my hard work was finally paying off. But there were moments that made me pause. The way his hand would linger on my shoulder when reviewing presentations. How he'd stand just a little too close at the coffee machine, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and oppressive. Comments about my appearance disguised as compliments. That dress really suits you, Emily. You should wear blue more often. I told myself I was overreacting. This was corporate America. People were friendly, touchier than I preferred maybe. But that's just how it was. Richard was from an older generation. Different rules. Besides, he was married, had 2 kids in college. His wife's picture sat prominently on his desk, a blonde woman with a practiced smile who showed up to every company event in pearls and perfectly pressed dresses. The office culture at Brightwell was intoxicating in its intensity. We worked hard and played harder. Happy hours that turned into late nights at exclusive clubs, weekend retreats that blurred the lines between professional and personal. Everyone knew everyone's business, and gossip spread faster than wildfire. But there were unspoken rules. 2. Don't rock the boat. Don't be difficult. Don't be the woman who cries harassment and ruins the vibe. I noticed things, though. How Richard's previous assistant had transferred to the Seattle office suddenly. How the younger women on our floor seemed to have an unspoken communication system. Subtle warnings when Richard was in a mood. Shared glances when he made another inappropriate joke in meetings. How HR always seemed to be conveniently unavailable when certain complaints arose. Sarah, who sat 2 desks over, once started to tell me something about Richard during lunch. Just be careful, she'd begun, then stopped, shaking her head. Never mind. You seem like you can handle yourself. The way she said it made my stomach turn. but I pushed the feeling down. I was Emily Carter. I was going places. I could handle Richard Hale. Looking back now, I realize how naive I was. How the system was designed to make women like me feel both special and trapped. Special enough to think we were different. That what happened to others wouldn't happen to us. Trapped enough to stay silent when it did. The Ashford rain started falling outside my office window that first day of November, 6 months into working for Richard, gray clouds matching the growing dread in my chest. I didn't know then that within 4 months, I'd be the one signing his termination papers. I didn't know I'd become the woman who finally said, enough. All I knew was that something had shifted. The friendly mentor was showing another face, and I was beginning to understand why that assistant had fled to Seattle. The first real incident happened on a Thursday. I remember because I was wearing my new black blazer, the one I'd bought to feel more confident in board meetings. Richard called me into his office to review the Morrison Industries campaign. Normal stuff. Except this time, he closed the door behind me. Sit, he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. But as I moved toward it, he stopped me. No, here. You'll need to see my screen. He patted the small space on the couch beside him. Too close. My skin prickled, but I sat down, laptop balanced on my knees, maintaining as much distance as the narrow couch allowed. You know, Emily, he said, not looking at the presentation. You're different from the other girls here. More sophisticated. His hand found my knee, just resting there, like it was nothing. I've been thinking about your future with the company. I shifted away, letting my laptop slide between us. I appreciate your mentorship, Richard, about the Morrison campaign. We should discuss your career over dinner, tomorrow night, Le Bernardin? Not a question. His fingers traced the hem of my skirt. Wear something nice. That red dress you wore to the Goldman pitch would be perfect. My throat felt like sandpaper. I have plans tomorrow. Cancel them. His tone shifted, harder now. This is important, Emily. For your career. That night, I barely slept. I kept replaying the moment, wondering if I'd misread it. Maybe he was just being friendly, supportive. But I knew the difference between mentorship and whatever this was. The way his eyes had tracked down my body, the deliberate touch, the thinly veiled command disguised as an opportunity. I didn't go to dinner. Monday morning, Richard's entire demeanor had changed. He humiliated me in the team meeting, dismissing every idea I presented. Maybe marketing isn't your strong suit after all, Emily. Perhaps you'd be better suited to administrative work. The others looked away, uncomfortable but silent. Message received. The emails started that week. Professional on the surface, but laden with subtext. Disappointed you couldn't make our meeting. Let's reschedule. My schedule is very demanding, but I always make time for team members who are serious about advancement. Then, later that night, from his personal email. You look tired. Everything okay? I'm here if you need to talk. About anything. 2 weeks later, the company mixer. Open bar, dim lighting. Everyone loosened up after quarterly reviews. I was talking to a client when Richard appeared, whiskey heavy on his breath. His arm snaked around my waist, pulling me against him. This is our star player, he announced to the client. His hand slipped lower. Emily and I make quite the team. I excused myself to the bathroom and threw up. When I came out, Sarah was waiting. You okay? She asked quietly. We looked at each other, and I saw my own fear reflected in her eyes. It happened to me too, she whispered. Last year, and Rebecca before that, and Melissa in accounting. Why didn't anyone? I reported it. HR said it was a misunderstanding. Said Richard was just old school. Then my performance reviews tanked. I'm transferring to Portland next month. She gripped my hand. Document everything, Emily. Everything. The text messages started coming at all hours. Thinking about that presentation. Can't sleep. You up? That outfit today. Each one made my skin crawl. During meetings, he'd stare at me. That predatory focus that made everyone else in the room invisible. He'd find excuses to touch me, adjusting my collar, brushing imaginary lint off my shoulder, guiding me through doorways with his hand on my lower back. 3 weeks after the mixer, working late on a Friday, just the two of us in the office. Richard cornered me by the printer. "You're being very cold, Emily. I'm trying to help you here." His breath was hot on my neck. "But you're making this difficult. Do you know how many women would kill for the attention I'm giving you?" "Please stop." My voice came out smaller than intended. "Stop what?" He pressed closer. "I'm not doing anything. You're imagining things, stressed maybe. Perhaps you're not cut out for this level of pressure." That's when I understood. This wasn't just harassment, it was psychological warfare. Make me doubt myself, my perceptions, my reality. Make me feel crazy for thinking anything inappropriate was happening while simultaneously making it clear that everything depended on my compliance. I started keeping a journal that night. Every incident, every inappropriate comment, every witness. My phone became my weapon. Voice recorder app always ready. Screenshots of every message. I learned to position myself strategically in meetings, always with my phone recording in my pocket. The girl in the mirror looked different now. Hollow eyes, tense shoulders, constantly looking over my shoulder. This wasn't the Emily Carter who'd walked into Brightwell with such hope. But maybe that was the point. Richard didn't want that confident woman. He wanted someone broken, compliant, afraid. He just didn't know I was building a case that would destroy him. Sleep became a stranger. 3 a.m. would find me staring at my ceiling, replaying every interaction, wondering if tomorrow would be the day Richard finally crossed a line I couldn't return from. My apartment, once my sanctuary, felt like a holding cell between the hours I had to face him again. I started arriving at the office early, leaving late, timing everything to minimize alone time with Richard. But he adapted, like a predator learning its prey's patterns. He'd show up at my desk when the floor was empty, stand behind me during presentations, close enough that others noticed but not enough for anyone to say something. The worst part was the gaslighting, the constant invalidation of my reality. "You seem paranoid lately, Emily. Is everything all right at home?" he'd say in front of others, painting me as unstable. When I'd pull away from his touch, he'd laugh it off. "Emily's not a hugger. Everyone, so uptight." Making me seem cold, difficult, not a team player. The other women knew. We had a silent network of glances and subtle warnings. Janet from legal would text me when Richard was heading to my floor. Lisa would suddenly need my help with something when she saw him corner me by the coffee machine. But nobody spoke about it openly. The fear was suffocating. I tried to talk to my manager, David, during my quarterly review. "I'm having some challenges with Richard's management style," I said carefully. David's expression immediately closed off. "Richard's methods get results. Maybe you need to adapt better. Be more flexible." Then, quieter. "Don't make waves, Emily. Not if you want a future here." The message was clear. Richard was untouchable, and I was disposable. My work started suffering. How could I focus on campaigns when I was constantly looking over my shoulder? Mistakes crept in, small at first, then bigger ones. Richard made sure to highlight each one publicly. "This isn't like you, Emily. Maybe you're taking on too much. Maybe you need closer supervision." My friends outside work noticed the change. "You're jumpy," my roommate Megan said one night after I'd flinched when she touched my shoulder. "What's going on at that job?" But how could I explain? How could I tell her that my boss was slowly, systematically breaking me down, and everyone around me was letting it happen? The Thursday night emails were the worst. Always after midnight. Always just professional enough to deny wrongdoing. "Thinking about your presentation tomorrow. We should align beforehand. My office, 7 a.m. Refusing meant public humiliation. Accepting meant being alone with him. I started having panic attacks in the bathroom stall. Heart racing, hands shaking, the walls closing in. Once, Janet found me there, hyperventilating into a paper towel. She didn't say anything, just rubbed my back until I could breathe again. When I finally looked up, there were tears in her eyes too. "It was worse before," she whispered. "There was a girl, Amanda. She tried to file a formal complaint. Richard had connections everywhere, the CEO, the board, even the law firm that handled the investigation. They destroyed her. Said she was mentally unstable, had been stalking Richard, making things up for attention. She couldn't get hired anywhere in Chicago after that." The story chilled me to my bones. This wasn't just about one predatory man. It was about an entire system designed to protect him. My mother called one Sunday. Worried. "You sound different, honey." "Tired." "Just work stress, Mom." "That boss you mentioned, Richard? You used to speak so highly of him." I almost broke then, almost told her everything. But what would I say? That the golden boy of Brightwell Strategies was a sexual predator? That I was documenting his harassment but too scared to use it? That I went to work every day knowing I was walking into a trap? "He's fine, Mom. Everything's fine." But everything wasn't fine. I was drowning in broad daylight while everyone watched. The culture at Brightwell wasn't just toxic. It was deliberately cultivated to enable men like Richard. The long hours that isolated us from outside support systems, the drinking culture that blurred professional boundaries, the competitive environment that made us see each other as threats rather than allies, the golden boy system that made certain men untouchable. I learned that Richard had done this at his previous company too. A friend of a friend who worked at McKinsey Corp told me about the sudden departure of 3 female employees during Richard's tenure there. "Everyone knew," she said, "but he brought in huge accounts. So, that tiny word that excused so much damage, week by week. I felt myself disappearing. The confident woman who'd walked into Brightwell was being replaced by someone who flinched at footsteps, who mapped out escape routes from every room, who kept her phone recording constantly just in case. This wasn't just harassment anymore, it was psychological torture. One particularly bad night, after Richard had trapped me in the elevator and whispered what he wanted to do to me, I sat in my car in the parking garage and seriously considered driving into a concrete pillar. Not to die, just to hurt myself enough that I wouldn't have to go back. That's when I realized he was winning. He was destroying me exactly as planned. But that night, something else stirred beneath the fear. Anger. Pure, clean rage at the unfairness of it all. At Richard, yes, but also at everyone who enabled him, who chose their comfort over my safety, who decided his contributions were worth more than my dignity. I wasn't going to be another Amanda, another cautionary tale whispered in bathroom stalls. I was going to fight back. I just needed to be smart about it. The next morning, I smiled at Richard when he commented on my dress, laughed at his inappropriate jokes, played the game, let him think he was winning. All while my phone recorded everything. The breaking point came at the company's annual winter gala. Black tie, champagne flowing, everyone pretending we were one big happy Brightwell family. I'd worn a conservative black dress, high neckline, nothing that could be misconstrued. As if fabric could protect me. Richard had been drinking since the cocktail hour. I watched him work the room. That practiced charm fooling everyone. His wife had stayed home, a migraine, he'd said. By 10 o'clock, most of the senior staff had left. The younger employees stayed, taking advantage of the open bar, the music getting louder, inhibitions dropping. I was heading to the bathroom when Richard intercepted me in the hallway. The music from the ballroom muffled but still audible. Nobody else around. "Emily." He was swaying slightly, eyes glassy but focused. "We need to talk about your future." "Tomorrow." "Richard." "In the office?" He grabbed my wrist. Hard. "Now." He pulled me into an empty conference room, shutting the door behind us. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might burst. This was it. The moment I'd been dreading for months. "You've been avoiding me," he said, backing me against the wall. "That's not smart, Emily. Not smart at all." "Richard, please." "Shut up." His hand was on my throat now. Not squeezing, but present. A threat. You think you're special? You think you can just ignore me? His other hand started pulling at my dress. I own you. Your career, your future, everything. And it's time you understood that. That's when the door opened. Lisa from accounting stood there, eyes wide. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Richard stepped back, smoothing his tie. Lisa, Emily and I were just discussing her performance review. Lisa looked at me, at my trembling hands, at Richard's flushed face. Emily, are you okay? She's fine. Richard answered for me. Aren't you, Emily? I couldn't speak. My throat felt crushed even though he'd barely touched it. Lisa stayed in the doorway, not moving. Emily, I need your help with something, now. Somehow my legs worked. I walked past Richard, past his whispered, "This isn't over," and followed Lisa out. She didn't stop until we were in the parking garage. In her car, doors locked. That's it, she said, hands shaking as she started the engine. That's fucking it. This has to stop. She drove me home in silence. At my apartment, she finally spoke. I took a picture. When I opened the door, he had his hand on your throat. Emily, that's assault. The word hung between us. Assault. Not harassment, not inappropriate behavior. Assault. There's someone you need to meet, Lisa continued. Her name is Catherine Walsh. She used to work at Brightwell, left 2 years ago. She's been building a case, collecting stories. She has 6 women ready to come forward, but they need someone current, someone with recent evidence. Catherine Walsh. I'd heard the name whispered like a ghost story. Richard's former direct report, who'd supposedly had a nervous breakdown and left the industry. She didn't have a breakdown, Lisa said, reading my thoughts. Richard assaulted her at a client dinner. She reported it. They buried her, but she didn't give up. She's been waiting, gathering evidence, looking for the right moment. Emily, this could be it. That night, I made the call. Catherine's voice was steady, determined. I've been where you are, she said. Scared, alone, thinking you're crazy. You're not crazy. He's done this to at least a dozen women that I know of. But you're the first one still inside who's willing to fight. She told me about the pattern. Richard always chose women on the rise, talented, ambitious, but not yet established enough to be believed over him. He'd mentor them, make them feel special, then slowly escalate. The company always protected him because he was too valuable to lose. But here's what they don't know, Catherine said. I've been in touch with a journalist from the Tribune. She's been investigating workplace harassment in Chicago's corporate culture. She wants to expose Brightwell, but she needs current evidence, active testimony. Emily, what happened tonight? Do you have any proof? Lisa took a photo. There was silence. Then, that changes everything. But we need more. We need a pattern, documentation, multiple witnesses. How much evidence do you have? I thought about my hidden folder, screenshots of messages, audio recordings of his propositions, the journal documenting every incident. Enough to bury him. Then here's what we're going to do, Catherine said, her voice taking on the tone of a general planning a battle. You're going to keep playing along, keep gathering evidence, but now you're not alone. We have lawyers ready, pro bono, women who've been through this themselves. We have the journalist. We have other victims ready to speak, but we need one more thing. What? We need him to do something in front of witnesses he can't discredit. Something undeniable. The gala was good, but Lisa's just an accountant. We need senior leadership to see it. My stomach turned. You want me to bait him? No, I want you to give him enough rope to hang himself. Men like Richard can't help themselves. They escalate. They get careless. And when he does, we'll be ready. After I hung up, I sat in my dark apartment, still in that black dress, and felt something shift inside me. For months, I'd been the prey. But prey can become predator when cornered. And Richard Hale had no idea he'd just cornered the wrong woman. I opened my laptop and started organizing everything. Every email, every recording, every witness statement from the women who'd confided in me. By dawn, I had a file that would destroy Richard Hale. But Catherine was right. We needed one perfect moment, one undeniable act in front of the right people, and I knew exactly how to create it. The plan required me to become someone I wasn't. Calculating, deceptive, cold. But maybe that's what survival looked like in Richard's world. Catherine connected me with her lawyer, Diana Chen, a former prosecutor who'd left the DA's office to fight workplace harassment cases. Our first meeting was in a coffee shop nowhere near Brightwell's offices. First rule, Diana said, sliding a small device across the table. Better recording equipment. Phone apps can fail. This is voice-activated, uploads directly to a cloud server I control. Completely legal in Illinois. We're a one-party consent state. She walked me through the legal strategy. Richard's pattern is clear, but patterns aren't enough. We need what I call a smoking gun moment. Something so egregious that Brightwell can't claim misunderstanding or overreaction. The gala was good, but Lisa's photo is blurry, and Richard will claim you were having a consensual conversation that she misinterpreted. We need audio, video if possible. And witnesses they can't dismiss. Catherine had assembled what she called the network. 7 women who'd survived Richard, each with their own evidence. We met in Diana's office after hours, sharing stories that were horrifyingly similar. The gradual escalation, the gaslighting, the professional retaliation when they resisted. He told me I was special too, said Amanda, the woman who'd been destroyed for reporting him. Said I had CEO potential. Then when I refused his advances, suddenly I was emotionally unstable and not a culture fit. Together, we mapped out Richard's behavior patterns. He was most aggressive during high-stress periods, end-of-quarter, big client pitches. He targeted women between 28-35, successful but not yet senior enough to be protected. He always escalated after company events where alcohol was involved. The quarterly board meeting is in 3 weeks, I said. He always does a team presentation. The entire C-suite will be there. Diana leaned forward. That's our moment, but we need to control the variables. The next 2 weeks were the hardest of my life. I had to let Richard think he was winning while secretly documenting everything. I started warming up to him, smiling at his jokes, accepting his dinner invitations, always finding last-minute excuses to cancel, letting him believe I was finally breaking. There's my girl, he said one morning, hand on my lower back as he guided me into his office. I knew you'd come around. Smart women always do. My skin crawled, but I forced a smile. I've been thinking about what you said, about my future here. His eyes lit up with predatory satisfaction. Good. We should discuss it properly. This weekend, my wife's visiting her sister. Maybe after the board presentation, I said, playing coy. I want to focus on making you look good first. He bought it completely, started treating me like his special project again. But now with an possessive edge, he'd mention our weekend plans in front of others, making it seem like we had something going on. Classic predator behavior, establishing public narrative that would make any future complaint seem like a consensual relationship gone wrong. Meanwhile, I was building my arsenal. The recording device caught him propositioning me in empty conference rooms. I screenshot his increasingly explicit late-night texts. I forwarded every inappropriate email to a private server Diana had set up. Catherine introduced me to the journalist, Sophia Martinez, from the Tribune. I've been investigating Brightwell for 6 months, she said. 3 board members have harassment complaints in their past. The whole company is built on protecting predators. But Richard is the key. If we can take him down publicly, others will follow. We refined the plan. During the board presentation, I would need to create a situation where Richard would act out in front of everyone. It was risky. If I pushed too hard, it would look like a setup, too soft, and he might not take the bait. You need a trigger, Diana advised. Something that makes him lose control. Men like Richard hate public rejection. Use that. I practiced in the mirror, rehearsing the exact words, the exact tone. I couldn't seem too confident. That would raise suspicion. But I couldn't be too weak either, or the board would dismiss me as another emotional woman. Lisa and Sarah agreed to be in the room, strategically positioned to record everything on their phones. Catherine would be in the building, ready with security footage access she'd obtained through a sympathetic IT contact. Sophia would be nearby, ready to break the story the moment we had what we needed. This is dangerous, Diana warned the night before. Richard might get violent. Are you prepared for that? I thought about all the women before me, the ones who'd been silenced, driven out, destroyed. I thought about the ones after me, the future victims if Richard wasn't stopped. I'm prepared. The morning of the board meeting, I dressed carefully. Professional but not provocative. Nothing Richard could use against me later. I put the recording device in my blazer pocket, tested it 3 times. Lisa gave me a small nod as I passed her desk. Sarah was already in position by the conference room. Richard was in his element, greeting board members with that practiced charm. He pulled me aside before we started. After this, we celebrate. Just the 2 of us. No more games. Emily. Actually, Richard, I said, loud enough for others to hear. I need to talk to you about that. His expression darkened. Now? It's important. The board members were taking their seats. CFO Marcus Williams, CEO Thomas Brennan, Chief Legal Officer Patricia Hayes. All the people who'd protected Richard for years, about to witness his downfall. Richard grabbed my arm, squeezing hard enough to bruise. Whatever you're thinking, don't. You have no idea what I can do to you. Actually, I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. I do. The trap was set, now I just had to spring it. The presentation started smoothly. Richard was in peak form, commanding the room with quarterly projections and client acquisitions. I played my part, supportive team member, handling the slides, smiling at appropriate moments. The board members looked pleased. Thomas Brennan even nodded approvingly when Richard mentioned my contributions to the Morrison campaign. 40 minutes in, we reached the Q&A portion. This was it. Patricia Hayes asked about team retention rates. We've had some turnover in your department. Richard, 5 women in 2 years. Any concerns? Richard's jaw tightened slightly. Natural attrition. Some people can't handle the pressure. Actually, I said, standing up, my voice cutting through the room. I'd like to address that. Every head turned to me. Richard's face went pale, then red. Emily, he warned, this isn't the time. When is the time, Richard? I kept my voice professional, but firm. When you corner me in empty offices, when you send inappropriate messages at midnight, when you put your hands on me at company events. The room went silent. Thomas Brennan straightened in his chair. Ms. Carter, these are serious allegations. Yes, they are. I pulled out my phone, hands steady despite my hammering heart. Would you like to hear the recording from last Tuesday, or see the screenshots of messages Richard sent at 2 a.m.? Or perhaps Lisa could share the photo she took at the winter gala when Richard had me pressed against a wall. Richard erupted, "You fucking bitch!" He lunged across the table at me. "You planned this, you seduced me, and now you're trying to destroy me." Marcus Williams and another board member had to physically restrain him. Richard was struggling against them, his face contorted with rage. "She's lying. She's been throwing herself at me for months. Check the cameras. She's always in my office." "Because you required it," I said calmly. While inside, I was terrified. "I have 43 emails where you demanded private meetings. Would you like me to read them?" "This is entrapment," Richard shouted, still fighting against Marcus's grip. "She's setting me up. Her and those other cunts who couldn't hack it." The word hung in the air like a bomb. Patricia Hayes' face went white. Thomas Brennan stood up slowly. "Richard, you need to leave. Now." "You're taking her side, this little whore?" Richard broke free, advancing on me. "Do you know what I've done for this company, the millions I've brought in? And you're going to believe some uptight bitch who can't take a compliment?" Sarah stepped forward. Phone raised. "This is all being recorded, Mr. Hale." Richard spun toward her. "You too? How many of you are in on this?" "7," I said quietly. "7 women with evidence, and that's just from Brightwell. We haven't counted your time at Mackenzie Corp yet." The color drained from his face completely. "You can't prove anything from Mackenzie." "Amanda Chen can, remember her? The one you assaulted in Singapore? She's ready to testify. So is Jennifer Walsh, and Maria Santos, and—" "Shut up!" Richard grabbed a glass paperweight from the table and hurled it at me. I ducked, and it shattered against the wall behind me. "I'll destroy you, all of you. I'll make sure none of you ever work again." Security burst through the door. Lisa had called them the moment Richard lunged at me. As they restrained him, Richard kept screaming threats. "You think you've won? I own this city. I know everyone. You're dead, Emily. Your career is dead." Patricia Hayes was on her phone, presumably with legal. Thomas Brennan looked like he'd aged 10 years in 10 minutes. Marcus Williams was staring at me with something between shock and respect. "Ms. Carter," Thomas said slowly, "I think we need to see everything you have." I opened my laptop, connected it to the conference room screen. "This is just my evidence. There are 6 other women ready to present theirs." For the next hour, I methodically presented everything. The emails, the recordings, the messages, the witness statements. Richard's pattern of predation laid out in undeniable detail. The board members' faces grew increasingly grim. "There's more," I said, as Sofia Martinez entered the room. "This is Sofia Martinez from the Tribune. She's been investigating workplace harassment at Brightwell for 6 months. The story runs tomorrow, with or without your cooperation." Thomas Brennan looked at Sofia, then at me, then at Patricia Hayes. "Pat?" Patricia was reading something on her phone. "Legal says we have full grounds for immediate termination, with cause, no severance, no references, potential criminal charges." "But what about the clients?" Marcus asked. Richard handles nothing anymore," Thomas said firmly. "Ms. Carter, we need a full list of the women involved. They'll all receive full compensation, NDAs waived, and any negative employment actions reversed." "No NDAs," I said. "We talk publicly, or more women get hurt." There was a long pause. Then Thomas nodded. "No NDAs." Later, after the police had taken statements, after HR had begun their real investigation, after Richard had been escorted from the building, screaming lawsuits and threats, Patricia Hayes pulled me aside. "You recorded all of this without telling us. You coordinated with multiple people. Some might call that entrapment." I looked her straight in the eye. "And some might call years of protecting a serial predator criminal negligence. Should we discuss that with Sofia?" She nodded slowly. "Point taken. For what it's worth, Ms. Carter, I'm sorry. We failed you. All of you." But apologies wouldn't give back the months of fear, the sleepless nights, the pieces of myself Richard had tried to steal. Still, watching him dragged out in handcuffs was a start. The revolution had begun with a whisper in bathroom stalls. It would end with headlines and court cases. And Richard Hale would finally face consequences for the first time in his life. The termination papers sat on the conference table like a verdict. 3 hours had passed since Richard's violent outburst, and the building was buzzing with shocked whispers. HR had called an emergency meeting with all 7 victims. We sat around the same table where Richard had held court for years, but now it was our turn. Given the severity of Mr. Hale's actions, Patricia Hayes began, "The board has voted unanimously for immediate termination with cause. However, there's a procedural matter. As the primary complainant with the most recent and documented evidence, Emily, you have the legal standing to sign as the reporting party." She slid the papers toward me, Richard Hale's name typed in bold at the top. The checkbox marked termination with cause, gross misconduct. lines for signatures at the bottom. My hand trembled as I picked up the pen. All those months of terror, humiliation, self-doubt, they all led to this moment. The other women watched me, their faces reflecting the same mixture of disbelief and vindication I felt. "Where do I sign?" My voice was steady now. "Here, here, and here." Patricia pointed to the lines. "You're signing as the primary witness and complainant. This makes you the official record holder of his termination." The pen felt heavy with significance. Emily Carter, the nobody marketing specialist from Illinois, was about to end the career of Brightwell's golden boy. I thought about every degrading comment, every unwanted touch, every night I'd cried in my car. I thought about Amanda, driven from the industry, about Sarah's transfer to Portland, about all the women who'd suffered in silence. I signed my name with deliberate clarity. Emily Carter, 3 times. "It's done," Patricia said quietly. "Richard Hale is officially terminated from Brightwell Strategies." Catherine Walsh, who'd been brought in as an advisor, leaned forward. "This isn't just about Richard, Emily. You've exposed a systemic failure. The board wants to know. Will you stay and help rebuild the culture here?" I almost laughed. Stay? In this building that had been my daily nightmare? Thomas Brennan cleared his throat. "We're prepared to offer you Richard's position, VP of Strategic Development, triple your current salary, full autonomy to build your own team." The room went silent. They were offering me Richard's job, his office, his power, the very position he'd used to terrorize women for years. "You want me to take his place?" I asked. "We want you to transform it," Thomas replied. "Create new policies, establish safe reporting systems. Make sure this never happens again." I looked at the other women. Lisa nodded encouragingly. Sarah had tears in her eyes. These women who'd supported me, who'd risked their own careers to stand beside me. "I'll take it," I said, but with conditions. First, all 7 women here get promoted or compensation packages, their choice. Second, we implement mandatory harassment training led by actual experts, not HR videos. Third, we establish an anonymous reporting system that bypasses direct management. And fourth, we hire Diana Rodriguez's firm as permanent external counsel for all harassment claims. Thomas and Patricia exchanged glances. "All acceptable," Thomas said. "When can you start?" "Monday. But first, there's something else I need to do." That evening, as maintenance cleaned out Richard's office, my office now, I stood by the window, watching the city lights. My phone buzzed with messages. The Tribune article had gone live an hour ago. Breaking: Brightwell Strategies, VP terminated after multiple harassment allegations. Sophia had crafted it perfectly, damning but legally bulletproof. Richard's wife had already filed for divorce, according to Catherine's sources. His country club membership had been revoked. The state attorney was considering criminal charges. In one day, his entire world had crumbled. But the sweetest moment came when security brought me a box of Richard's personal items to review before sending them to him. There, on top, was the photo of his wife that had sat on his desk. Underneath it, I found a hidden folder of photos, women from the office, taken without their knowledge. Pictures of me, of Sarah, of Lisa. Trophies. I documented everything and sent it to Diana. More evidence for the criminal case. As I stood in what was now my office, I thought about the morning I'd first walked into Brightwell, so full of hope and ambition. Richard had tried to break that woman, to reduce her to nothing. But instead, he'd created something he never expected, a survivor who refused to stay silent. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Emily, honey, I saw the news. Are you okay?" "I am now, Mom. I really am." And for the first time in months, I meant it. I'd signed those papers not just as Emily Carter, marketing specialist. I'd signed them as every woman Richard had hurt. Every woman who'd been silenced. Every woman who'd been told to just endure it. The predator was gone. The prey had become the hunter. And I'd fired my boss with his own weapon, the truth. looking at his name on those termination papers one last time before filing them away. I felt no satisfaction or joy, just relief, deep, bone-settling relief that it was over, that I'd won, that Richard Hale would never hurt another woman at Brightwell again. Because I'd made sure of it, with 3 signatures and the power of 7 voices refusing to stay silent. The morning sun streamed through the glass doors of Brightwell Strategies as I walked out for the last time as Emily Carter. Victim. When I'd return on Monday, it would be as Emily Carter, VP of Strategic Development. But right now, I needed this moment, this breath between who I'd been forced to become and who I chose to be next. The plaza outside was busy with the usual Friday afternoon crowd. Business people rushing to catch trains, grabbing last-minute coffees, living their lives unaware that 20 floors up, a revolution had just taken place. I stood there, feeling the weight of the past 6 months finally lifting from my shoulders. My phone buzzed. Richard's arrest had made the evening news. The footage showed him being led out of his Gold Coast home in handcuffs, trying to hide his face from the cameras. The mighty Richard Hale reduced to a perp walk. The reporter mentioned multiple victims and systemic cover-up. By Monday, Brightwell would be in full crisis management mode. But that wasn't my problem anymore. My job was to rebuild, not to manage their PR disaster. Catherine found me at a coffee shop an hour later. "How does it feel?" she asked. "Empty," I admitted. I thought I'd feel triumphant or vindicated, but I just feel tired. She nodded knowingly. "That's normal. You've been in survival mode for so long. Your body doesn't know how to stop fighting yet. It takes time to remember who you were before all this. What if I can't? What if Richard took that person from me permanently? Then you build someone new, someone stronger, someone who knows her worth and won't let anyone diminish it again." She paused. "You know what you did today? You didn't just fire your boss. You gave every woman in that building permission to fight back. You showed them it's possible to win." That weekend, messages poured in. Women from Brightwell, from other companies, from across the country who'd read the article, each one sharing their own story, their own Richard. The magnitude of what we'd exposed was staggering. This wasn't just about one predator at one company. It was about an entire system that needed to burn down and be rebuilt. Lisa and Sarah came over Sunday night with wine and Thai food. We sat on my apartment floor, processing everything that had happened. "Do you know what the best part was?" Sarah asked. "When he called us cunts in front of the entire board, the mask didn't just slip, it completely shattered. They couldn't pretend they didn't know anymore." "They always knew," Lisa said quietly. "They just finally couldn't ignore it." We talked until dawn, not about Richard or Brightwell, but about our dreams, our plans, what we wanted to do with our newfound freedom. Lisa was starting her own accounting firm. Sarah was moving to Portland, but on her own terms this time. And me? I was going to transform Brightwell from the inside out. Monday morning arrived too soon and not soon enough. I dressed carefully, a red power suit I'd bought over the weekend. Red for strength, for defiance, for the blood of my old self that had been spilled to birth this new version. The elevator ride to the 20th floor felt different. People looked at me differently, some with respect, some with fear, some with gratitude. I was no longer invisible, no longer just another potential victim. I was the woman who'd brought down Richard Hale. His office, my office, had been completely cleaned. No trace of him remained except the view. And even that looked different now. Where once I'd seen a city full of traps and dangers, I now saw possibilities. Other companies to reform, other women to empower, other Richards to expose. Patricia Hayes knocked on my door. "Your first meeting is in an hour. The team needs direction. They're scared." "They should be," I said. "The old way is dead. They can either adapt or leave." She smiled slightly. "Richard never scared me the way you do right now." "Good." Richard ruled through intimidation and exploitation. I'll lead through accountability and transformation. Fear me if you've got something to hide. Respect me if you don't. As she left, I pulled out the framed photo I'd brought from home. Not of family or friends, but of myself from my first day at Brightwell. That hopeful, naive woman who'd thought hard work and talent were enough. I didn't pity her anymore. She'd been exactly who she needed to be to become who I was now. The local news played on my computer in the background. Richard had been denied bail. Flight risk, the judge said. His assets were frozen, his reputation destroyed, his power evaporated. All because one woman decided to say enough and 7 women stood together to prove it. But the real victory wasn't in his destruction. It was in what we'd built from the ashes. A new culture at Brightwell. A network of survivors turned warriors. A precedent that predators could fall and victims could rise. I thought about all the women who'd messaged me over the weekend, the ones still trapped in their own versions of this nightmare. This victory was for them too. Proof that the system could be beaten, that silence could be broken, that justice, though delayed and difficult, was possible. The sun climbed higher over Chicago, flooding my office with light, somewhere in the city. Richard Hale sat in a cell, his empire reduced to a cautionary tale. And here I sat, in his former throne, not as his replacement, but as his reckoning. I'd fired my boss. But more than that, I'd reclaimed my story. And that was the real revenge. The phone rang. Another reporter. Another interview request. The story was far from over. In many ways, it was just beginning. But for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of what came next. I was ready for it. Thank you for listening to my story. I know it wasn't easy to hear, but these stories need to be told. If you're listening to this right now, wherever you are, your car, your office, maybe even hiding in a bathroom stall at work, I want you to know you're not alone. Drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from. Let's build our own network of survivors and supporters. Subscribe to the channel if these stories resonate with you, and please, share your thoughts below. Your voice matters, your story matters, and together, we're stronger than any predator who thinks they own us.